Hello and welcome. I want to tell you about a sentence that made my stomach drop. I was in a cold car park in Narooma on Yuin country, watching a rough cut of our winter whale projection when Auntie Elle said, calm as anything, "You can't screen that here." No hello, just the truth. Up until then, I thought we were close. We'd mixed archival humpback recordings, layered kids' drawings, animated a mother and calf weaving through moonlit surf. I'd even told a colleague it felt right. Then Auntie said, "The song you used isn't yours to put on a wall. And that wave pattern, that's not our pattern." It cut like wind through my jacket. I'd crossed a line I hadn't even seen. We'd met with the local Aboriginal corporation, scoped permissions, read ethics codes and screen guidelines. 2 elders had given a cautious nod if it was respectful. We'd budgeted for consultation fees. I thought we were doing it right. But right isn't a checklist. Right is a relationship. And relationships demand attention, reciprocity, and the humility to accept when you've misstepped, even with good intentions. The brief sounded simple. 12 minutes about the winter whale migration for everyone. The reality was a tight timeline, 2 sandstone walls, 1 August weekend, and a family audience. I wanted to center Yuin knowledge about baleen whales and show how stories shape behavior around the ocean. I've spent a decade in conservation media. I know stories move people more than statistics. Under pressure, I took shortcuts. I blended elements I'd heard from different Yuin speakers into a single public story. Our designer used a wave motif that felt coastal but belonged to a neighboring nation. Worst, I scripted a scene I shouldn't have scripted at all. I had treated cultural elements like open source code. Mix, match, ship. But Indigenous cultural and intellectual property doesn't work that way. Knowledge is held in trust, passed down through lineages, tied to places and responsibilities. Auntie said, we need to sit down, not over email. So we did. Me, my producer, 2 local artists, and 4 elders at the community center. I was nervous enough to knock my tea over. Auntie laughed with me, not at me. "You're not the first," she said. "Let's make you the last, at least this month." We began with the question that should have come first. Whose story is this to tell? Not in an abstract way, but literally. Who holds this knowledge for this stretch of sea, in this season, and for which audience? Using a song isn't just notes and words. You're engaging with the systems that give that song its power. We mapped our scenes against those responsibilities. One elder tapped the moment where our narrator described a whale song she heard as a child. "That's mine to say, not yours." Another pointed at the wave pattern. "That belongs to Boomerang. You're on Yuin." Someone else flagged a shot of kids eating fish around a fire. "Check those species. Some are totems. Don't show people eating their own totems." I flash back to the way I'd treated taboo as generic. In practice, it's tied to kinship and country, to obligations and care. We put the standards on the table. National ethics codes, protocols for working with First Nations artists, and the true tracks principles: respect, self-determination, consent, interpretation, integrity, secrecy and privacy, attribution, benefit sharing, recognition and protection. We measured our draft against them. We fell short on consent. It wasn't specific. On interpretation, we'd collapsed multiple versions into one. And we were flirting with breaches of secrecy and privacy with the song. Those principles became our roadmap for the rebuild. Self-determination meant moving from consultation to collaboration. Interpretation meant holding space for multiple versions, not forcing a single voice. Attribution meant ongoing recognition of knowledge holders, not just a credit at the end. Then reality hit us. The whales cross multiple countries. The story couldn't just be Yuin whales. It had to acknowledge that other nations, sometimes with different protocols, share responsibility for the same animals. Cross-border collaboration is normal in conservation. It needs to be normal in storytelling. One elder called it patient storytelling, honoring multiple perspectives rather than flattening them. So we paused. We paid delay fees to the crew. We told the council the program would change. We scrapped the song. We retired the wave motif. We commissioned a local artist to design something specific to place. We invited knowledge holders to guide the voiceover and replaced my narration with community voices. And where a story wasn't ours to tell in public, we left space. A gentle acknowledgement that some knowledge stays on country and off the wall. We checked every animal on screen and removed shots that conflicted with totem obligations. We wrote agreements that recognized community ownership of recordings and edits, set up royalties, and gave elders real veto power through a formal approval process. We hosted a community preview, left time for changes, and set boundaries for where and how the film could travel so it wouldn't be stripped of context. If you make things, here's what I wish someone had whispered before we started. Begin with relationships, not assets. Spend time with the right people before you define your story. Ask specifically, whose story is this? Who holds it? Who can share it? And for which audience? Make consent granular. Permission to meet isn't permission to project. Be explicit about every element. Songs, patterns, words, faces. And about formats, platforms, places, and timeframes. Shift from consultation to co-creation. Put First Nations collaborators in decision-making roles, not just review goals. Build a governance group and pay them properly. Budget for elders' time, for changes, for the possibility that the ethical outcome is to stop. Treat your deadline as a hypothesis. If the timeline clashes with ethics, change the timeline, not the ethics. Tell funders early that approvals drive delivery. Be place-specific. Don't use generic motifs or borrow from neighboring nations. Commission local artists and designers. If an element is shared across countries, name that respectfully and include people who hold it in each place. Be careful with sound. Songs, language, even environmental recordings can carry restrictions. If we're unsure, leave it out until you have the right permission from the right custodians. Mind species and scenes. Check totem relationships and avoid depicting the consumption of animals that are totems for local families. Understand who can say certain words or show certain images and who cannot. Don't collapse multiple versions into one neat voice. If there are different tellings, hold them side by side, or acknowledge there are parts you won't share in public. Write agreements that reflect Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. Attribution that foregrounds knowledge holders. Benefit sharing through fees and royalties. Community control over raw materials. Clear limits on reuse, derivatives, and AI training. And a true right to say no at any stage. Plan for review and aftercare. Host a community preview before any public release. Allow time for changes. And decide together what happens if concerns arise after launch. Keep the relationship going beyond the festival. And if you misstep, and you will at some point, own it fast. Pause. Pay for the extra time. Fix the thing. Don't defend it. Apologize without centering your feelings. And ask how to make amends that matter. How did our whale projection end up? Smaller, slower, truer. The mother and calf remained, but the rhythm shifted under the hands of local artists. The waves carried a pattern born of that coastline, not borrowed. Where a song would have been, we let the ocean breathe, recorded with permission, in a way that respected place. The narration became a weave of voices and sometimes a deliberate silence. We added on-screen notes naming country, knowledge holders, and limits, shared here with permission, not speaking for all, not to be copied or remixed. On opening night, I stood at the back and watched families lean into the winter air, Kids pointed at cousins' drawings. An elder gave one small nod when a line landed right. And that nod meant more than any award on a shelf. Later, Auntie Elle smiled and said, "Now it feels like it belongs here." That was the point. If you're crafting stories about animals, especially in Australia, remember, animals aren't just species in a field guide. They're relations. Whales, birds, plants moving across seasons. These connect countries and communities, and that connection brings obligations. Our job isn't to simplify those obligations for a tidy narrative. Our job is to hold them carefully, make room for complexity, and accept that sometimes the most ethical choice is to leave parts of a story untold. I still love a good statistic, but I trust stories to move behavior, and I trust that ethical process is part of the story. When you build with respect, consent, and genuine collaboration, the work carries a different kind of power. It asks audiences to listen differently. It asks us as makers to be patient, to be accountable, and to be brave enough to hear no. So if you're planning a 2025 project on First Nations animal stories, start earlier than you think. Pay properly. Write agreements that protect community rights. Make time for the messy middle. Hold space for many truths. And if someone you trust says you can't screen that here, take a breath, sit down, and listen. That sentence might be the doorway to doing it right. Thanks for listening. Let's keep making work that earns its place.